The rain in Seoul didn't wash things clean. It just made the neon lights on the wet asphalt look like spilled oil. Han Min-jun watched the droplets race down the window of his sedan. At 34, Min-jun was a man composed entirely of sharp angles and bespoke tailoring. He was the CEO of Hanul Investment, a boutique firm risen from the ashes of his public disgrace 5 years ago. To the world, he was the prodigal son who had clawed his way back. To himself, he was a man holding his breath. "We need a partner for the gala, sir," his secretary, Mr. Choi, said from the front seat. "Chairman Ryu will be there. Appearing alone makes you look isolated. Appearing with a chaebol heiress makes you look desperate for a merger. You need a variable." Min-jun didn't answer. He looked out at the narrow alleyway in Seongsu-dong. They weren't parked in front of a hotel, but a cramped art restoration workshop. He needed a ghost, someone who could wear a mask for 3 hours, say nothing, and disappear. He stepped out, the umbrella held instantly over his head by a bodyguard. The bell above the shop door jingled cheaply. The air inside smelled of turpentine, old paper, and dust. A woman stood behind a high table, illuminated by a harsh magnifying lamp. She didn't look up. She was using a scalpel to scrape microscopic debris off a Joseon-era vase. Her hair was cut into a sharp, chin-length bob utilitarian, severe, exposing the nape of her neck. It wasn't the soft curled hair of the women in his circle. "We're closed," she said. Her voice was low, textured like rough silk. "I'm not here for the pottery," Min-jun said. She finally looked up. Lee So-eun, 29. Official occupation, assistant restorer. Unofficial background, the daughter of the man Min-jun's family had destroyed. She didn't know he knew. Or perhaps she did. Her eyes were dark, unblinking, devoid of the fawning warmth he was used to. "Han Min-jun," she said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. The man who turns ruin into profit. "I have a proposition, Ms. Lee." He placed a single crisp envelope on the table, careful not to touch the vase. "One evening, 3 hours, high visibility. You play the role of a companion. You say very little. In exchange, I clear your late father's debt with the banks." So-yeon put the scalpel down. The metal clicked against the glass table. She wiped her hands on a rag, her gaze never leaving his face. There was no fear in her, only a simmering calculation. "My father didn't have debt," she said coldly. "He had a stolen pension and a ruined reputation thanks to the audit your mentor, Chairman Ryu, orchestrated." "Then do it for the access," Min-jun countered, his voice lowering. "Ryu will be there. You want to look the man in the eye who signed the papers? This is your ticket inside the fortress. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a weapon." She paused. The air between them crackled with 5 years of silent history. She looked at the envelope, then at him. She picked up the scalpel again, twisting it in the light. "I don't wear silk, and I don't bow to liars," she said. "If I go, I don't go as your prop. I go as your equal, and I choose the dress." Min-jun felt a rare flicker of respect behind his ribcage. Agreed. The interior of Min-jun's penthouse in Hanam-dong was breathless, minimalist, gray, and suffocatingly expensive. So-eun stood in the center of the living room, feeling like an intrusion in a sterile laboratory. She wore her usual oversized trench coat and combat boots. Her short hair was slightly messy from the wind. Min-jun placed 2 cups of tea on the low table. He didn't sit. He paced. "The event is the 50th anniversary of Ryu Corporation. It is a celebration of truth and transparency." "The irony is intentional," Min-jun briefed her, his tone clinical. "You are Lee So-eun, an art consultant I recently hired. It's close enough to the truth to pass a background check, but vague enough to avoid questions." So-eun took a sip of the tea. It was bitter. "And if they ask about my family, you deflect. You talk about the restoration of the Goryeo Celadon. You bore them with technicalities. The wealthy pretend to love art, but they only love the value of it. If you talk about the process, their eyes will glaze over. You sound like you hate them," So-yoon observed. She wasn't looking at the view of the Han River. She was watching his hands. He was clenching and unclenching his left fist a tick. I am them, Min-jun corrected, stopping his pacing. I was raised in those banquet halls. I know that a smile is usually a baring of teeth. Why me? So-eun asked. There are agencies for this, models who know which fork to use. Min-jun turned to her. The distance between them was vast, filled with unsaid apologies. Because you are the only person in this city who hates Chairman Ryu as much as I do. I can't trust a model not to sell a recording to the press. But I can trust your anger. So-eun set the cup down. It's not anger, it's accounting. I want the books balanced. She stood up and walked to the window. Her reflection ghosted over the city lights. I have conditions, Han Min-jun. Name them. I'm not a Cinderella project. Do not try to fix me. I will not wear extensions. I will not cover the scar on my arm. And when the night is over, you give me the file you have on the 2019 internal audit, the unredacted one. Min-jun stiffened. That file was his insurance policy. It was also the smoking gun that proved her father was innocent and had been framed to cover Ryu's embezzlement. Giving it to her was dangerous for both of them. If I give you that file, you become a target, he warned. I've been a target since the day my father walked off that bridge, she said, her voice steady but brittle. Deal or no deal? Min-jun looked at her, really looked at her. She was small against the glass, but she stood like a monolith. Deal, he said. The fitting was conducted in a private salon in Cheongdam. The stylists fluttered around So-eun like anxious birds, holding up flowing chiffon gowns in pastels and creams. They wanted to soften her, to make her palatable for the chaebol wives. No, So-eun said, rejecting a pink tulle dress. I look like a cupcake. Min-jun sat on a velvet sofa reading a tablet. He didn't intervene. He was letting her fight her own battles. Miss, the stylist urged, short hair requires a softer neckline to balance the... My hair is not a mistake to be balanced, So-eun snapped. She walked over to the rack and pulled out a black tuxedo dress. It was structured, double-breasted, with sharp lapels and a hem that hit just below the knee. It was severe, elegant, and aggressive. She went into the changing room. When she emerged, the room went quiet. The dress fit her like armor. It emphasized the long line of her neck and the sharpness of her jaw. She looked not like a companion, but like an executive. She walked up to Min-jun. Well? He looked up. For a second, his professional mask slipped. He didn't see a tool for revenge. He saw a woman who commanded the space she occupied. It's formidable, he said. They won't ask you to fetch drinks in that. Good. She sat next to him, ignoring the stylist's gasp as she crossed her legs comfortably. Now, brief me on the players. Who is the weak link? Ryu's son Jae-in, Min-jun said, shifting the tablet to show her a profile. He's the CFO. He's weak, anxious. He knows about the falsified ledgers. If you press him, he cracks. But you can't be obvious. You have to be a ghost from his past. I remember him, So-eun said softly. He was the intern who brought coffee to my father's office. He used to bow 90 degrees. Then he testified that my father was stealing funds. Min-jun saw the tremble in her hand, quickly suppressed by clenching her fist. He felt a sudden, irrational urge to cover her hand with his. He resisted. We don't need to break him tonight, Min-jun said, his voice unusually soft. Just rattle the cage. Can you handle seeing him? So-eun looked at herself in the mirror. The black dress, the sharp hair, the cold eyes. I'm not the same girl who cried at the funeral, Min-jun. I'm the one who kept the receipts. Good, Min-jun said, standing up. Because tonight, we are walking into the lion's den, and I need you to be the thorn in its paw. The drive to the hotel was silent. The tension in the car was thick enough to choke on. Min-jun was checking his phone incessantly, his thumb scrolling through stock reports he wasn't reading. Stop it, So-eun said. He froze. Excuse me? You're spiraling. You do it when you feel out of control. You tap your left foot and scroll without reading. She didn't look at him, staring straight ahead at the traffic. Minjun put the phone down. I am perfectly calm. You're terrified, she countered. Not of Ryu. You're terrified of failing, of looking foolish. She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a small tin. She popped it open. Mint? It was such a mundane, pedestrian offering that Minjun blinked. He looked at the small white tablet. He took it. The sharp taste of peppermint cut through the nausea rising in his throat. My father used to say that anxiety is just the body preparing for a fight, she murmured. He was wrong, though. Anxiety is the body remembering a defeat. Minjun turned to look at her. The streetlights cast shadows across her face. I was there, he confessed quietly. The day the board fired me. The day they announced the audit on your father. I was in the room. I stood there and I said nothing. I let them scapegoat him because I thought if I stayed quiet, I could fix it from the inside later. I was a coward. It was the first time he had admitted it aloud. So-eun turned her head. Her expression was unreadable, but the hardness around her mouth softened slightly. You were 29. You were up against a man who owns half the politicians in Seoul. You weren't a coward, Minjun. You were outmatched. She shifted, her shoulder brushing his suit jacket. But you're not 29 anymore, and you're not alone tonight. It wasn't forgiveness that would take years, but it was an understanding, a truce. Why are you helping me? He asked. Really? Because, So-eun said, smoothing the lapel of her structured dress. I want to see the look on Ryu's face when he realizes he didn't bury us deep enough. The car slowed. The lights of the Grand Hyatt loomed. The paparazzi flashes were already exploding like lightning. Minjun took a breath, the peppermint cool in his chest. He held out his arm. Shall we? So-eun didn't hesitate. She looped her arm through his. Her grip was firm, grounding. Let's go ruin a party. The ballroom was a sea of black tuxedos and shimmering gowns. The air smelled of expensive perfume and lilies, the scent of funerals and galas. A string quartet played something harmless and classical in the corner, drowned out by the murmur of gossip. As Minjun and So-eun entered, the room didn't go silent, but the temperature shifted. Heads turned. Whispers rippled outward like waves from a stone thrown in a pond. Han Minjun is back. Who is she? Is that the new merger partner? So-eun walked with a precise, measured gait. She didn't cling to Minjun. She walked in stride with him. Her short hair stood out in a room full of flowing extensions and updos. She looked modern, sharp, and dangerous. Smile, Minjun murmured, barely moving his lips. But not too much. Look bored. I am bored, she whispered back. The champagne is warm. They navigated the room. Minjun introduced her simply. My associate, Ms. Lee. He watched the other men assess her. They were confused. She didn't giggle. She didn't defer. When a banking executive made a condescending joke about art being a hobby for wives, So-eun corrected him on the tax implications of art depreciation with such chilly precision that the man apologized and fled. You're enjoying this, Minjun noted as they paused near an ice sculpture. I like watching them squirm, she admitted. They don't know where to place me in their hierarchy. It makes them nervous. Then the crowd parted. Chairman Ryu Taio approached. He was 60, silver-haired, radiating a grandfatherly warmth that masked a shark's instinct. Flanking him was his son, Jae-in, who looked pale and sweaty. Minjun-ah, Ryu boomed, opening his arms. I didn't think you'd come. It shows maturity. Minjun bowed, just enough to be polite, not enough to be submissive. Chairman, happy anniversary. The company looks stable. Ryu's eyes flicked to So-eun. He scanned her, the short hair, the inexpensive jewelry, the defiant posture. He didn't recognize her. She had been a child when he ruined her father. "And who is this charming guest?" Ryu asked, his tone dripping with patronizing sweetness. Minjun felt So-eun's arm tense against his. This was it. "Lee So-eun," she said clearly. She didn't bow. Ryu's smile didn't falter, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "A pleasure, Ms. Lee. Are you in finance as well?" "Restoration," So-eun said. Her voice was calm, carrying over the nearby conversations. "I specialize in uncovering layers, paint over paint, lies over truth." Ryu chuckled, a dry sound. "A poetic profession. We must have you look at the company collection sometime." "I'm already familiar with it," So-eun said. She took a step forward, breaking social distance. She was close enough to smell Ryu's cologne. Specifically, the archives from the 2019 logistical merger. My father was the auditor, Lee Jin-ho. The name landed like a grenade. Jae-in, the son, dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor. The sound was distinct, sharp, and shocking. The string quartet seemed to falter. Ryu's smile froze. It didn't disappear, but it became rigor mortis. He said. "Mr. Lee, a tragedy. He was a troubled man." "He was a meticulous man," So-eun corrected. "He kept backups of everything, even the Project Blue Sky ledger that was supposed to be incinerated." Minjun watched Ryu's face. The color drained away. Project Blue Sky was the code name for the embezzlement scheme. It was a term that had never been made public. Only 3 people knew it. Ryu, Minjun, and the dead auditor. "I beg your pardon," Ryu whispered, his grandfatherly mask cracking. "I found it," So-eun lied. Or perhaps she wasn't lying. Her eyes drilled into Ryu. "In the lining of his old briefcase. It's amazing what people miss when they are too busy covering their tracks." The silence around them was absolute. People were staring at the broken glass, at Jae-in's trembling hands, at the unknown woman with the short hair who was staring down a tycoon. "I think you've had too much to drink, miss," Ryu hissed, his voice dropping to a menace. "I haven't had a drop," So-eun said. She turned to Minjun. "I'm ready to leave now, CEO Han. The air in here is stale." Minjun offered his arm. He looked at Ryu, whose hands were clenched into fists. "Good evening, Chairman," Minjun said. "We'll be in touch." They didn't speak until they were in the car. As soon as the doors closed, Minjun hit the partition button, sealing them off from the driver. "You went off script," Minjun said, his voice tight. "You weren't supposed to mention the briefcase. That wasn't the plan." "The plan was to rattle him," So-eun said. She was shaking now, the adrenaline crash hitting her hard. She hugged her arms to her chest. "I rattled him." "You threatened him with evidence we don't have," Minjun snapped. "Do you have a ledger and a briefcase? Do you?" "No," she admitted. "But he thinks I do. Did you see Jae-in's face? He's going to call me. Tonight. He's going to try to make a deal." "Or they're going to send someone to burn down your apartment," Minjun yelled. He raked a hand through his perfectly styled hair, destroying the look. "You don't understand these people, So-eun. They don't negotiate. They eliminate." "I understand them better than you think," she shouted back. "They killed my father. You think I care about safety? I want justice." Minjun looked at her. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She was furious. "Driver," Minjun said into the intercom. "Change of destination. Go to the safe house in Seongbuk-dong." "I'm going home," So-eun protested. "No, you're not," Minjun said, his voice dropping to a command. "You just declared war on the Ryu family. You are not sleeping in a shop with a glass door. You're coming with me." "I don't take orders from you." "Then take it as a request," Minjun pleaded, his eyes desperate. "Please, if something happens to you because of tonight, I can't have that on my conscience. Not again." So-eun looked at him. She saw the genuine fear in his eyes. It wasn't about the merger or the money. He was scared for her. She exhaled, her shoulders slumping. "Fine, but I'm taking the bed. You sleep on the couch." The safe house was a small, secure villa used for visiting foreign executives. It was quiet. Outside, a storm was brewing. Minjun poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to So-eun. She was sitting on the floor, leaning against the sofa, still in her tuxedo dress, though she had kicked off her heels. "My father," Minjun started, sitting on the floor near her, leaving a respectful distance. "He told me to sign the papers that blamed your father. He said it was company survival. He said your father would be compensated, sent overseas. I didn't know they would press charges. I didn't know he would jump." So-eun finished the sentence. She swirled the amber liquid. "He didn't jump, Minjun. He had a heart condition. The stress caused a cardiac arrest in the interrogation room. The police ruled it suicide to close the case quickly. Ryu paid them off." Minjun stared at her. "I didn't know." "There's a lot you don't know. You think you were the prince of that castle, but you were just a pawn, just like him." She took a sip. "The Project Blue Sky ledger. It doesn't exist. My father destroyed it to protect me. He thought if there was no proof, they'd leave us alone." Minjun closed his eyes. "So we have nothing. We bluffed." "We have Jae-in," she said. "He's weak. He called my phone 5 minutes ago. I didn't answer." Minjun looked at her phone on the table. It lit up again. Unknown number. "Answer it," Minjun said. "Put it on speaker." So-eun picked up the phone. Her hand hovered over the button. She looked at Minjun. In this moment, stripped of the gala's glamour, they were just 2 broken children of a corrupt system. "Trust me," Minjun whispered. She pressed answer. "Ms. Lee." Jae-in's voice was frantic, slurring. He was drunk. "Don't release the ledger. Please. My father, he'll kill me. It was his idea. The offshore accounts. I have the emails. I can give you the emails. Just don't destroy me." Minjun's eyes widened. He grabbed a notepad and scribbled, "Meet him." "I want the emails, Jae-in," So-eun said, her voice ice cold. "Tonight, or the ledger goes to the prosecutor tomorrow." Yes, okay, the marina, 1 hour." The call ended. Minjun looked at So-eun. "We have him." "We?" she asked. "We," he affirmed. He reached out, and this time he did cover her hand with his. It was warm. "Partners." The marina was dark, the sound of water slapping against the hulls of yachts filling the silence. Minjun stood in the shadows, his security team positioned around the perimeter. So-eun stood under the lone streetlight, holding a generic USB drive, the fake ledger. Jae-in arrived in a sports car, looking disheveled. He stumbled out, holding a thick manila envelope. "Give it to me," Jae-in demanded. "The drive." "The envelope first," So-eun said. Jae-in threw the envelope on the ground between them. "It's all there. The instructions from my father, the wire transfers. It proves I was just following orders." So-eun stepped forward to pick it up. "Wait," Jae-in said, pulling a gun from his jacket. It shook in his hand. I can't let you leave with that. If I kill you, it goes away." "Jae-in!" Minjun stepped out of the shadows. He didn't have a weapon. He held his hands up. "Put it down. There are cameras everywhere. My security is streaming this." "Minjun Hyung," Jae-in sobbed. "He made me do it." "I know," Minjun said, walking slowly past So-eun, placing himself between the gun and her. "He destroys everyone he touches. Don't let him turn you into a murderer. You're a victim too." Minjun was gambling with his life. He could feel So-eun's breath on his back. He was the shield. "It's over, Jae-in," Minjun said softly. "Give me the gun." Jae-in looked at Minjun, then at the dark water. He dropped the gun. He fell to his knees, weeping. Minjun kicked the gun away. He turned to So-eun. She was clutching the envelope to her chest, her eyes wide. She looked at Minjun not as a business partner, but as the man who had just stepped in front of a bullet for her. He reached out and touched her face, his thumb grazing her cheekbone. "Are you okay?" She nodded, unable to speak. She leaned into his touch, just for a second, surrendering the weight she had carried for 5 years. "Let's go finish this," he said. 3 months later, the news was everywhere. Chairman Ryu arrested. Ryu Corporation stock plummets. Massive embezzlement scheme exposed by whistleblower. The legal process was slow, boring, and brutal. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was a dissection. Lawyers, audits, boardroom coups. Min-jun had used his capital to stabilize the company while ousting the Ryu family. He was now the interim chairman, tasked with cleaning up the mess. Min-jun sat on a bench in the park near the restoration workshop. He wore a casual coat, no tie. He looked younger, lighter. So-yoon walked out of the shop. She had paint on her cheek. She held 2 coffees. "Chairman Han," she teased, handing him a cup. "Shouldn't you be in a meeting?" "I escaped," he said, taking the coffee. "Mr. Choi is covering for me." They sat in silence, watching the autumn leaves fall. There was no desperate need to touch, no dramatic declaration. Just the comfortable silence of 2 people who had seen the worst of each other and stayed. "I visited my father's grave today," So-yoon said. "I told him it's done." "Did you tell him about us?" Min-jun asked, looking at her. "Us?" She raised an eyebrow. "Is there an us? I thought the contract was fulfilled." Min-jun smiled. It was a real smile, reaching his eyes. "I'm drafting a new contract. Indefinite term. No expiration date. Clause 1, you pick the restaurants. Clause 2, I stop checking stocks at dinner." So-yoon laughed. It was a bright, clear sound. "I'll consider it, but I have high standards." "I know," Min-jun said. He reached over and wiped the smudge of paint from her cheek. "I count on it." He looked past her, at the digital billboard on the building across the street. It showed Ryu Tae-oh being led into the prosecutor's office, his face hidden by a jacket, his hands bound. The man who had owned the city was now just another old man in a cheap suit, entering a small room from which he would never truly return. Min-jun turned back to So-eun, the woman who had saved him by letting him save her. "Coffee is getting cold," she said. "Let's get another one," he replied. They stood up together, walking away from the shadows and into the afternoon sun, leaving the ghosts behind them.